So first, tell me a bit about yourself.
Yeah.
I know that you joined SoftServe in 2001 as a junior developer. How did you end up until today as the CTO of the company?
Yes, it is true. I joined SoftServe about 23 years ago, and I know that people joke that usually professionals don't live that long in one company, especially, and therefore I feel like a dinosaur. But I think it's a good journey for me. I joined SoftServe in 2021 as a result of an opportunity that I had with one of my teachers who was teaching in the university, the databases course, and probably there was something that he saw in me, and they invited me to be an intern at SoftServe. At that time, I thought that it would be a really great opportunity for me to have access to computers, internet. Back then, if you remember, it was not very common as it is today. And I never thought it's going to be such a long journey for me. I always thought of it as a temporary gig. And now it's about 23 years. And during my career, I worked in almost all possible roles at SoftServe, mostly in engineering. This is where I started. But I also worked as a head of delivery, as a consulting leader, as a head of our functional offices when we underwent some transformations internally. And back then when I joined, it was 200-person company. Right now it's more than 10,000. And I'm happy that I was one of the guys who somehow contributed a little bit to that phenomenal success that we have.
What do you think is still left from that spirit that you found in SoftServe at the beginning?
I think back then it was a different environment that we kind of evolved. Back then it was the very immature market. We were, I would say, somewhere in the end of the food chain. And that, in order to survive, caused you to exhibit different properties as a human, as a professional. So usually you had to run extra miles, you had to do way more than clients expected of you. And as a result of that, that created the culture that you always try to give more than you take, at least in the leadership teams, right? I think that spirit is still there. Obviously, it's much harder to keep that culture intact as we grow 30% year over year over the last 10 years. But at least at the core of the company, among the leaders of the company, we still have that spirit. The spirit of extra mile, the spirit of customer obsession. And it's something that made us successful back then, and I believe that similar cultural norms will help us to succeed in the future.
Do you think that is, I don't know, a trait of the Eastern European region, just doing the extra mile in terms of stepping into the market?
Right, because we didn't have any advantages back then other than our knowledge, our expertise, and our willingness to succeed. So we, as you know, in Eastern Europe, we have really good mathematical background, engineering background. Back then, our predecessors were building some missiles to compete with the Western Bloc. And after the collapse of Soviet Union, and liberation of all Eastern Europe, I think the opportunity was immense. The biggest thing, though, was that people were not really savvy in terms of how to run business. What does customer experience means, how to work with customers. And I think that kind of immense will that we had eventually turned into skill to work with customers and to succeed. And we see a lot of examples in Eastern and Central Europe, of these companies. But yeah, that was the Eastern European thing. And I hope that we still will retain that, because that's what made us successful back then.
And coming to the present times, being the CTO of SoftServe, what exactly is the role of the CTO in SoftServe in developing new business, in searching for new areas of interest in terms of technology?
Right. So it is a techno-functional role at SoftServe. So our customers view us through the prism of our capabilities, because capabilities essentially define the value potential that we can create for them, right? Therefore, the role of CTO at SoftServe, the mission of CTO role at SoftServe, is to accelerate and advance our capabilities development so that we could have not only capabilities that customers need today, but also the capabilities that customers may need tomorrow. Something on the brink of the emerging tech, something that may not have a really good market fit yet, but we see that it's getting there, and we are getting ready to be able to be more competitive, basically, as we go down the path. So that's the whole role, what is about, right? And in scope of that role, we institutionalize these capabilities in the form of centers of excellence. So basically, we have two types of organizations, SoftServe. On one hand, we organize around our customers, and we call it delivery units. On the other hand, we organize around different expertise areas, and we call it centers of excellence. And that form kind of duality allows us to kind of reap the benefits of both forms and advance us further. And I'm proud to say that when I started, I think we were about less than 5% of whole SoftServe as our own organization, and right now we are more than 20%. And that kind of we were able to increase our share by far over these years, and that makes me feel really proud because all the projects that we start, all the technical complexities or organizational complexities, they're usually tackled through CTO organization at SoftServe.
Would you describe the centers of excellence as almost research centers inside SoftServe that try to understand the new technologies before they are you have a client that needs them?
So I would say that we have a portfolio approach. We have practices within our structure that are already at scale. They already found their market fit. They still have research component, but they are also like a money-making machines, right? They create value for our customers, and they grow big. For example, if we look at our cloud and DevOps practice or big data practice, or recently our data science practice, those areas are growing real fast. But we also have practices that, let me call it emerging practices, that do not have that good market fit yet. For example, AR, VR, or robotics, or blockchain. So those things that are not yet massively adopted because of different reasons, but we still kind of hone them and develop them because number one, it's an opportunity for us to differentiate for those customers that may require those kind of capabilities and solutions. And on the other hand, when the mass adoption happens, we're in a really good situation because we already have capability, skills, solutions, we're already prepared to go and scale. So basically, these guys are going from 0 to 1, and then the next phase for them will be going from 1 to N.
How does this process of taking a new technology and developing and implementing inside SoftServe work? How do you find, the study cases basically for the technology?
It's a combination of multiple factors. So on one hand, you work with your customers, you observe their needs, you observe different signals from them, and that serves you as one source of information. Then you do the similar observations on the market in general. You see different signals from the market because your customer base may not be representative of the whole market, for example. So using multiple signals from different areas, we're able to triangulate, okay, so what's going to be our next bets? And I'm using the word bets here because we're dealing with uncertainty. You never know whether something will work or not. Therefore, in a startup world, you gotta operate with uncertainty, with scenarios, with bets. We group these bets. We, let's say, make a certain bets in a very early stages of technology. And we see, okay, so whether they will find the market fit or not. If they find the market fit, we advance them from the incubation stage over to the ramp-up stage. And the ramp-up stage is about getting as much traction as you can. We don't care for profit as much as we are caring for profit with larger, more established practices at SoftServe, right? So their goal is just to acquire as much experience as they can with the real customers. And the more you practice, the better you become. And the better you become, the more customers you have, and you have this virtuous cycle that fuels your further growth. So you can think about it as a portfolio approach, where we have incubation type of practices, ramp up and scale type of practices. And the incubation part, it's like a funnel, right? We cherry pick different practices, and it's not something that we do every month or every half a year, because it's much slower process, right? The bigger technologies, the bigger kind of banks, they don't happen very often. They happen maybe like several times a decade, right? But within each practice, people also experiment a lot with new technologies, because there is also an innovation kind of loop within each even established practice. Like people may say that, for example, oh, cloud DevOps has been like here like for whatever, more than a decade, right? But there is a next generation cloud innovations that like hyperscalers produce like every year in a big amount, and that causes us to have an R&D motion even within those practices that we think are already established.
So if we would to talk about the changes that you saw in the last year, in terms of your approach, the needs of the customers, what they are asking from you, because we saw the rise of new technologies, not new, but we saw the rise of AI, generative AI, and so on.
So there are two vectors here. So one thing has nothing to do with technologies. I would say that the biggest change over the last year was that the market that we operate in changed the modality. So basically, like, it was a seller market, like, over the last 15 years. And over 1 year, it changed the modality to the buyer market. And buyer market means that, like, there are more sellers, like the companies like us, chasing like fewer buyers, right? So as the buyer has more power, you see that markets stopped expanding as much. And as a result of this, there is a really big price pressure on the market, and companies have to adapt. And they have to get leaner, they have to work on their overheads, they have to do more for less. This is inevitable, but this is a good thing. Like, it allows you to kind of, keep yourself in shape. In terms of technologies, over the last year, we see, and not only we, like, I think this is the bigger story, like over the last 2 years, the advent of generative AI models, specifically transformer architectures. And that is something that makes, a really hot spot on this relatively cold market, as we see right now. And that is like the area where we exert maximum effort right now with our generative AI lab, with our concerted effort to gain the momentum on that trend that we see. If we look at the bigger horizons, let's say, like, if we look at over the last 5 years, right, we see that digital started to penetrate more into the real sector of economy, because we got used to digital, like building apps and automating enterprise processes, right? But over the last 5, maybe 7 years, we see the digital started to penetrate into the businesses of real sector, where you built a lot of digital twins, where you do some simulations, where you try to kind of automate real world objects, like equipment, like real world processes, and create digital replicas of them, so that you could manipulate with these complex things, like with the ease of the digital, right? Iterate much faster and create more competitive advantage for your customers. So that will be another thing that is interesting to observe that's happening.
How did you approach the generative AI trend and the rise inside SoftServe? Because you have the lab, you are working and testing the solution also inside the company and also forward.
Right. So we have essentially 3 vectors of development. So the first vector is providing generative AI-based services to our customers, right? And the story here is the following. So we see the insane rate of innovation in generative AI space. So every week you see new and new releases of new things, right? So with that insane rate of innovation, the velocity of production of new technology based on Gen AI is so high that our customers really struggle to keep up with all of it, right? There is a big gap between what they understand, the skills that they have, and what is available on the market. And their gap is our opportunity, right? So specifically for that reason, we have created our generative AI lab, sort of like an incubator for this highly needed technologies, so that we could really quickly bridge that gap and channel these new innovations directly to our customers. We have multiple clusters there based on multiple technological stacks. We have Microsoft cluster, we have Google cluster, we have AWS cluster, we have NVIDIA cluster. So in other clusters that try to solve typical problems that customers face, we try to anticipate these problems. For example, okay, so how do we manage hallucinations? How do we reduce the cost of inference? How do we work with tabular data? And all these other elements that are kind of common across all the clusters in the lab. So we try to tackle these problems as fast as we can to find some solutions that work best or a little bit better than commonly available. And then by the time when we have customer interaction, we're able to provide them with the best solutions, the best services for their specific needs. So that's one of the directions that we have. The other direction is the application of generative AI in SDLC processes, in application development processes. And I'm proud to say that last year we probably did one of the largest study in the world encompassing more than 1,000 engineers across different disciplines of SDLC, where we try to ask ourselves a question: what is the impact of generative AI for application development? How fast you can become if you use the tool. So we had a cohort of 1,000 people. We split them in two groups, with generative AI tools and without. We invited people from different disciplines that comprise typical SDLC. We normalized their levels and other things to make sure that we will remove all the confounding factors. And we ran maybe hundreds of different use cases with them, the typical use cases that people have in application development space. The result of that is very amazing, because we saw that in that experiment, we saw more than 40% improvement in our output in generative AI group versus those that use conventional tools, or around 30% reduction in the time, right? So those are things kind of equivalent. But we got to take it with a grain of salt, because programming or development is not the whole engineering. There are meetings, there are other types of activities that people do during the project. So usually you may expect a little bit less than what we have obtained. But that's the second thing that we do at SoftServe, where we try to apply it internally and see how we can deliver more value for our customers with these tools, right? And the third vector is applying generative AI for our own internal processes beyond software engineering. For example, we have a bunch of internal tools that we use to automate our own processes. And I'm happy to see that we observe more and more Gen AI-enabled features in those tools. For example, one of the tools that we have is for automation of our recruitment and staffing processes. And in that tool, I recently saw the feature that allows any hiring manager to really quickly prompt for job description to be really quickly crafted and created. And back then, you had to copy paste, you had to do some kind of a little bit of here, a little bit of there. And with generative AI, it essentially shrinks that time significantly, because you are able to generate job description. Obviously, you need to validate it, you need to read it through, because you don't want to fully rely on the machine. But it allows you to accelerate your time and do something else instead of sitting and crafting job descriptions. So that's just one of the examples that we do.
Just stopping at Gen AI helping programmers. Some years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, we saw the rise of no-code, low-code tools. Is Gen AI coming for that market, or it's improving those kind of tools? Because they were used a lot in developing apps.
The no-code, low-code platforms is the solution for the products. Let's call it this way. There are two types of products that you build. The first type of products, let's call it simple things quickly. This is the low-code, no-code realm. They're really good for those type of products, because you can really quickly build that product, but you have to, you have some constraints. You have to, you limit yourself only with the building blocks that are available within that low-code or no-code platform, right? Then there is a second category of products, which I would call complex things possible. So the first one is about simple things quickly. The second one is about complex things possibility, right? This is the realm of custom software engineering. And I think generative AI right now plays more in that field. And one of the reasons why I like it is because it doesn't fix any abstraction layer. It's kind of fluid. You can go from this layer of abstraction down to that layer of abstraction, so you still have all the power. The challenge with low-code and no-code platforms is that you still need to, it's kind of fixed abstraction layer, and every time when you somehow doesn't fit into the requirements, you need to redefine this abstraction layer with custom engineering. And when you do that, you lose the benefit of having low-code platform, because why you need to do the custom software development then, right? So that's kind of the challenge. So I think it mostly plays on the custom software engineering place, and it has some traits of low-code in a sense that it allows you to tinker with code much faster, so that you don't spend that much time. But it's still custom software engineering under the hood.
I will use something that I heard at South by conference, and the speaker said that Gen AI will slow down because we will reach the end of the data on which the Gen AI can be trained. So the growth will be slower. How do you view this evolution of generative AI? We are now entering maybe a market of discovery of tools you can do and improve through the technology.
Yeah, and look, it's really hard to reason about the future, especially in the space where a lot of innovation happens these days. But in a nutshell, I would say that right now we mostly see text modality prevails in a lot of use cases where we train LLMs based on a lot of text, and text is only one small modality. Most of the information that humans perceive, they perceive not through text, they perceive through their eyes, through vision, through their haptics, through their touch kind of interface. This is where most of the information exists. And I think once we tap into these modalities, we will be able to have a much better, much more multimodal AI that will be by far more powerful than the modality that we have right now, with only text. So evolutionarily, I would say that at some point we will hit the limit with text data, because there's only the data that exists, right? And you can digitize it and feed into the network. But I think we haven't yet fully tapped into the multimedia modality. And I'm not sure about even haptics modality, where for example, as a human, you touch things and you learn from it, right? And similar thing, is not possible right now with conventional models, because there are just no such interfaces that give you that type of information and perception. But that will be evolutionarily, phase by phase approach.
Making a step backwards right now, because you used artificial intelligence and machine learning before, and you developed this kind of technologies for your customers. What was the need that you encountered? Because you talked about differentiating on the market from other competitors. In order to have these skills, this complex skills inside SoftServe.
So it's very customer specific, or I would even say industry specific and customer specific, right? So for one set of customers, you could help them to make their processes more intelligent by scanning and recognizing some documents or faces or license plates, and make some automated decision making based on some information, right? Could be one set of customers. But similar approach could be also applied, for energy companies, where you can help them to improve performance of their oil rig based on some physical reactions that you still can kind of automate, digitize, automate, and apply the same principles there. So I would say the principles and the models are the same. The application of these principles are different, and but under the hood it's kind of still the same, right? So that's the hardest part, to take the common general purpose technology and contextualize it to the specific and unique need of a customer. And keep in mind that we work in the realm of projects where there are no easy out-of-the-box solutions, because usually if there is out-of-the-box solution, the customer would have preferred to buy it, right? And since there are no solutions like that, they have no other choice as to build it from the scratch. And this is where they bring our experts, we bring our subject matter experts in these specific domains that are relevant to our customers, And they work together with our customers to kind of contextualize, like, okay, so what we are doing, like what kind of problem we're trying to solve, like, and then, we're solving it this way.
How much effort is brought into having people inside SoftServe that can understand different types of industries? Because as you mentioned, you work with different and complex industries, which should be understood before developing a product for them.
Yeah, so I would say that there are two types of customers, and I'm like simplifying right now, but there are customers that are saying, look, we hire you just because you have the best engineering skills or the best data science skills. We'll take care about subject matter. Don't worry about that. We will, work together with you, and we will define together what we are building here. So we are responsible for what, and you are responsible for how. But there are also customers that say, we also would like to work with a partner who could help us to define what and why. And this is where industry expertise starts to matter the most. And for that reason, what we usually do, we bring people who used to work in those industries in different roles, like even on our customer side oftentimes, so that they could become, our kind of liaisons with the business customers, from our customer side, right? With the business stakeholders from our customer side. So this is how it usually works. And I would say the more we observe, the more we evolve, the more we see the second type of customer starts to dominate in the structure of our deals, right? Back then it was easier because it was mostly covered by customers, but the more we go up the market, the more we kind of move up the value chain, the more they expect that type of insights coming from us, even to the extent that they expect us to come up with the repeatable solutions for their needs. And this is really hard because their needs may be pretty unique, to warrant a solution to be created, right? That's kind of one of the traps that a lot of companies are falling into. They're creating the solutions for pretty unique problems, and then they having troubles kind of monetizing the solution through other customers because nobody else have that specific need.
We see the market of providers of technology. Either you have Microsoft, OpenAI, Google, NVIDIA, and so on. What is the role of companies such as SoftServe in basically molding these solutions together in order to not have, an enterprise company which is basing its Gen AI only on OpenAI?
Right. So you just described actually a really eloquent concept. So the way how I see the market consists, let's say, of three types of players. On the one hand, you have technology producers, the likes of AWS, Microsoft, NVIDIA, you name it. They produce technology, which, if applied somewhere in enterprise, can give these enterprises some economic value, economic qualities, right? On the other hand of the equation, you have technology consumers. These companies that consume these technology innovations, for them to kind of gain these abilities. Here's the thing. The ability of technology producers, the velocity, how they produce this technology is much higher than the velocity of consumers of technology to consume. And as you can imagine, this pool kind of starts to fill in with a lot of water, which is this is what I call the adoption gap. The adoption gap that exists, which becomes the market for us. So what we essentially help to do, we bring expert liquidity to the market, just like banks bring financial liquidity, just like hyperscalers bring compute liquidity. We bring experts liquidity to the market and help these customers on the consumer side to adopt as many new technologies as possible. Now, the last 15 years, the velocities, this differential was super high, and therefore there was a huge market. The market actually was growing much faster than the ability of the market players to eat that pie, right? It changed over the last year, but I'm still very optimistic long term. I believe that with advance of generative AI and other technologies, it becomes cheaper to create apps. And if it's cheaper to create apps, there will be more applications and more experiences created. We gotta go into the long tail of the market where there will be more experiences and more apps, maybe with fewer users on average per app, but this is where we're going. And That's kind of our mission. So we bridge that gap between technology producers and technology consumers. Now, technology producers also get the benefit because we drive the adoption of their technologies. And this is like why they trust us with their most precious customers. That's, I would say, a very symbiotic relationship that we have between us, them, and our customers.
Another topic of discussion when talking about artificial intelligence and generative AI is ethics. And I want to tackle this subject with you. How do you control basically the ethics in Gen AI? And I think that the company such as SoftServe that serves enterprise customers is again in the middle.
Right. So it's a hard question because if technology or technological innovation is a tool, then that tool can be either kind of pills that treat you well and then heal you, or it can be a poison at the same time. It's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? And I think any actor, any malicious actor, using it as a tool can create some damage. And as well as any, benevolent actor who wants to do something good can do something good. I think this is the one of the areas of risk. And given the rate of innovation that we have right now, I assume that it's a matter of the balance where we want to draw the line with what is allowable, what is not allowable. Because on one hand, if you have too tight regulation, let's say governments, steps in and starts regulated heavily, you stifle innovation. People won't innovate that much, right? Innovation to some extent is trial and error, it's tinkering, right? So therefore, if you have, too strong regulation, you are stifling innovation. That's bad. If you let it go uncontrollably, well, there may be some kind of black swan events that may happen and they can have a ripple effect for the whole planet. So it's a matter of regulation. It's a matter of defining, the vectors of potential threats, understanding potential impact if something happens, and applying some level of controls that could prevent or alleviate, the negative effects. And that probably involves the body of experts from the industry to kind of be part of that kind of equation to help, drive proper regulations. But we got to be very careful where we're going to regulate. For example, if you want to regulate at the bottom of the stack at the LLM level, that may be not a good idea. Maybe you could regulate on the app level. Maybe regulate somewhere in the middle. So those kind of things are important. And it's the problem of ethics, it's the problem of safety, it's the problem of any risk that may exist. Like you touched the ethics part. If the data are biased because because the data, human produced data, if humans are biased, they produce data are bias exists there, then your, systems, if they're not de-biased, they can embed that bias in it. And as a result of that, you may have, biased kind of behavior from these systems. So all these, and this is a really complicated topic, and I don't want to simplify it because just giving recipes, you do this, you do that, because it's super hard to achieve. But I think it's a necessary thing. And I think big companies who produce big foundation models, they have a concerted efforts in this direction. Sometimes they are overcompensate, as we saw recently with some of the models that they overcompensated in several areas. And but this is you got to take that risk because every time when you do true innovation, it's connected with the risk, and this is the price that we pay.
What are some myths about generative AI that annoy you?
First of all, it's really hard to annoy me. I'm a very open and inclusive person and curious, and I'm trying to understand why people think this way. I think oftentimes it's not the annoying it's a thing. It's a thing that I kind of observe. Oftentimes, people become victims of media outlets that like to sensationalize content because they need to drive more traffic. They need to draw more attention to their content. The one of the ways to do that, they sensationalize content. They call it some ways, like, right, and like you oftentimes read articles that, hey, you know, this company applied generative AI and like, you know, replaced 90% of their people and whatever, like the apocalyptic things, like those kind of things. A lot of guys, a lot of people always fall victim, and the reality is a bit different. It's you know, it's not as futuristic as it's usually portrayed in the media, and therefore, you know, if you look at, I talk to a lot of leaders here in the U.S. and like they all say that, well, their board of directors putting some pressure on them in terms of generative AI because they read all these like yellow press and they like see all of these, you know, informational signals and they're like, well, look, these guys are doing this, like we're missing something right now, and they're putting the pressure on these technology leaders, and it kind of annoys them to some extent, because they say, wow, these guys don't understand what it is. And they kind of read these articles like they had nothing to do with reality. And then that part, I think, is it's not the annoying. It's just like you know, it's like a virus that we have to go through, and it'll go away. Oftentimes, I think we are right now at the like peak of the hype, and at some point, like it will subside, and we will become more realistic in our expectations.
Talking about expectations, what are your expectations for 2024 in terms of developing technologies, in terms of acquiring new skills in SoftServe?
So in terms of technologies, I believe that generative AI will incrementally advance more and more, but we see the limit with data. So most likely we will see more and more modalities being added into the models. We will see more adoption because like they all go into the hyperscaler stack. They all become available as managed services. So I don't actually believe that, you know, people will be building a lot of foundational models. Maybe the market will converge to several bigger kind of, you know, LLM models, like the foundational models, and the differentiation will be moving up in the chain, like into the app layer. So this is like what most likely will happen. And what we are trying to do at SoftServe, we are trying to essentially accelerate in our skills acquisition journey, right? For that reason, we established the Generative AI Lab. We partner with top like services providers or technology providers in the cloud space, so that like we could adopt their technology the fastest. And by doing this, these strides, like we essentially are able to run a little bit faster than most of the market right now. Even right now, like we see that like a lot of customers are still struggling with, okay, how do I define the use case? Where do I apply it, right? Everybody wants it, but nobody knows where do I apply it. So we help our customers to find the right use cases that may not have like too high of a risk, for example, but have enough value for them to, you know, to justify the investment into this technology. Some of the customers, for example, may know the use case, but their data platform is not ready. So they don't have the data. So you first need to do the data platforming, the proper data layers, in order to empower these use cases. So there is kind of a spectrum of different needs that customers may have, and there is a different readiness for them. But I would say that we are just, if I can use the metaphor, at the very, very beginning, like at the first season of the multi-year TV series that we call Generative AI. That's probably where we are right now.